Okay.
Okay, I think we'll get started. This talk is going to be about the Rutgers Person Registry, which is what we're calling it, at Rutgers, which is based on the Apereo OpenRegistry. My name is Dave Steiner, and I also have Mohammed Sadiq here from the Identity and Access Management at Rutgers University. We're going to go over a little bit. I don't know how familiar people are with OpenRegistry, so we'll talk a little bit about that and the pieces of it and benefits of it. We're also going to talk about what, as a university, most of these kind of identity systems need a lot of customization because your university is not going to customize itself to the product. So it has to go the other way. And so we're basically going to talk about what did Rutgers change and what process did we go through to put this into production. I would like to, hopefully the hotel network here will cooperate. I'm going to try to do a 10-minute demo or something like that too, just to show what it's like. The OpenRegistry has been around since I looked. The first emails that I got, does this sound right? March 2008?
Sounds about right.
I think I had saved all the old emails, so that's when my first one became a JSIG project.
Bill's forgotten he was at Rutgers at the time when I kicked off the project.
Okay. Became a JSIG incubation project in 2009. Since 2009, we have been developing it mostly at Rutgers. Some other institutions have helped, certainly a lot of discussion from multiple institutions. We did the OpenRegistry work and the localized work during that time. In May 2011, we started what we call a certification, and I'll talk more about that later. Basically, we ran it in parallel with our existing homegrown Oracle solution. And we did that for over a year. And it really helped us feel confident that this new product that no one else was using, that obviously has test cases and all that, but that everything worked. Okay. We deployed it in production in 2012. And since then, we've actually, it's not on here, but we actually had a merger with the med school, and we were able to deal with that fairly painlessly, at least for identity management. Just a few other things here. So I don't know how familiar a lot of people are, but maybe some aren't. OpenRegistry, it's an open source identity management system, holds identity data about your people and your institution. It can, doesn't have to, but it can include all populations, so students, faculty, staff, guests, alumni, retirees, etc. It is the identity store, but generally it's not authoritative. So you're getting data from authoritative sources like your student system, your PeopleSoft, or your banner, or whatever, or if you're like us, all of those. So they're the source of record. And the registry is just taking those, reconciling, trying to match up so that you don't have multiple entries in there, and then assigns identifiers of whatever type you need for that. Just a kind of picture of what I said, so you probably have a number of excuse me, a number of different source of records. They can be fed by batch, they can be fed by REST. Our guest system is basically going into the registry. So there's a number of different methods you can get this data in there. And it takes all this and comes up with a calculated person based on those sources. So some of the things you may see with a calculated person is if you get slightly different names from multiple sources, which one do you display? And so you can make those kind of calculations and choices. Here's an old picture of the component architecture. I think it's mostly still valid. I think this was from Ben or maybe Bill or somebody way back when. It still makes sense. So down in the bottom you have the registry. You have a number of plugins, reconciliation. That's where we're not using it today, but where you could put the identity match. Identifier assignments is basically create a net ID for this person, create other various identifiers. We recently added ID card support, so we generate card numbers and so forth for people. The three out of the 5 blue boxes above that are the input, so REST, web interface, batch in whatever format you want. The one next to it, the update queue, is basically the provisioning out of the registry, so all events get put on this update queue, and that's how we feed LDAP and data services and so forth. Some of the parts that we don't have today yet is a workflow engine. We're looking at that. Business rules, execution engine, we don't have that. And we don't really have anything that I would call an error manager in that sort of high level. But so that's an overview of registry. Status, we've been using it in production for 2 years now, I guess, with really good results. The data model obviously has been designed and is stable. I know the Berkeley project had made some tweaks to it, but I think it's basically stable. There'll probably be a rev version of that at some point. And the core is stable. We have an authorization module, which I'll show you, that we use. For us, at least, the reconciliation and calculation is local directors, obviously completed. The APIs, the rest, is there. We haven't used a lot of the rest, and so I would consider it not 100% fully tested. There are pieces we use. We test those, obviously, and use them, but we need to go back and go through the rest of the design and actually seriously test them at some point. It's integrated with CAS, etc. So the specific components that we've done as the Rutgers person registry on top of that, the UI is very specific to Rutgers and the things that we want to do. The assigning the identifiers, which is code-wise pretty trivial, but creating net IDs for people and creating other identifiers, that's done locally. We have our own reconciliation module that was based on what we were kind of doing previously, and then hopefully some improvements and tweaks and so forth. We added the camel routing to provision downstream systems, and we added the batch support for our particular upstream systems. Just in case you're interested, Rutgers, been around for a while, 3 campuses, typical big state university. I think these numbers are reasonably accurate because we did recently do a merger, but 50, 60,000 students, probably total of, well, we got quite a few new employees from the med school, so we're 20, 25 or more thousand there, and a lot of alumni. We have alumni in registry going back to about 1999, I think. Okay, so I mentioned we did this certification for a year. So what we did in May is we tested the initial load of our data from the old system, and then we basically ran it in production. We had the batch feeds coming in, and we did daily comparisons of things that changed and looked at it on a daily process, daily basis. Using various ways, using the UI to look at the data, using that database views to look at the data. Then in September of that year, we added some guest UI support, added audit, which we'll look at. We have some requirements for disclosure on what we can disclose to who and so forth, so we added some of that. And then did some integration with our email services to someone who needs to update their display address. They actually do it in a different system, and we use the REST APIs to get that information. And we started integration testing, working with the help desk and so forth. Did our first production release in August 2012. And at that time, we added a couple other features. One is split and join, which no matter how clean you think your upstream data is, it's not going to be. There's always going to be typos that get introduced or missing data or whatever. So split and join allow you to take two entities that are the same person, join them, or if we try not to do this, but if you've got a single person that's actually two people, you can split them. So we added more with the authorization features. So you'll see in the demo that you can basically come in and view a person and so forth. And so there's lots of different levels of authorization coming into the registry through the web that you can use. And so we have help desk people and we have system support people, and everyone has different authorization levels. With the downstream systems, we have an LDAP connector, so our LDAP system gets updated in real time every time there's a change in the registry. We also took our homegrown old Oracle-based system, which was the person database, we called it, and basically turned it into our data service. So it's not what does our registry anymore, but people have tons of scripts and stuff that get that data from Oracle and just pull it out. So it was kind of made sense, at least for the moment, to leave it there, and so we don't have to have all these people. Just gonna see if I can get the connection back. We don't have to have all these people change their where they get data from. Okay. Let's see, what else did we add? We had to add some REST APIs for what we call non-person entities. You want, since this is the source for all NetIDs, and that's used in the Unix machines and so forth, you need things like the Oracle user and root and et cetera, saved somewhere so that someone can't get that as their NetID, and that's what non-person entity, and we just kind of put them in a bucket, and therefore they're reserved and off they go. We have to do something what we call early onboarding for employees, because our HR systems don't seem to process people quick enough, even though that was a promise of it. But so we have a process that we can create an employee earlier than they come from HR. So they get a NetID, they can start getting accounts and whatever they need to get started. And then that'll be overlaid with their actual employee data whenever it comes down. We have a separate system from the registry called the NetID management application, and that's where people activate their NetID, which basically means set up a password, change their password, and do those kind of management tasks. It was because we had been running it for a year. There was a lot of work as we moved over for like the weekend or whatever it was, but it really was quite a smooth deployment, and we've had minimal production issues based on the code. There's always data issues, and we're always having to resolve things, but that's not a problem with the registry. Since then, we integrated with the University of Medicine and Dentistry at New Jersey, so they are now part of Rutgers. They were, in the previous slide, I mentioned they have about 5,000 students, but 15,000 employees. We use PeopleSoft and a homegrown student system. They use a single banner system for everybody, so that was interesting. But we added them as a new source of record, did some enhancements, but we're basically able to bring them on fairly easy, relatively easy. And then the last project that we did that we added to the registry was a new ID card system, and so we hold the ID card information and generate that information in the registry. Okay, so this is a picture of sort of the flow at Rutgers. In the middle, on the big blue box in the middle, is the registry. And then you have all these upstream systems that feed it. So you have your HR systems, your student systems, the guest system, we get email from the email system, etc. And then that feeds all these downstream systems, which the data services tables, the LDAP, and then possibly other feeds that you need. We did the merger, we have to feed data back to them. So if you want to look at or get involved in OpenRegistry, here's some links to do that, including the Cypher project. There's a mailing list for developers. We do a monthly or bi-weekly or whatever it is these days call. And just a little information about what we use. It's a Java-based, running on Tomcat, Spring, Camel, Hibernate, etc. Okay, so let's see. Well, let me talk about this one. So what's coming up, both for Rutgers and for OpenRegistry in general, is it is currently in incubation, and we'd like to see it move out of that and work toward that. We'd like to see some enhanced reporting. We do have a nice audit feature, but we'd like to add reporting. We have this data service, we have LDAP, but we'd like to look at other ways of extracting data from the registry and do provisioning and so forth. So we're looking at that. Either something like AMQ or the FortRock OpenIDM. We're looking to integrate Grouper with it, so we can do groups. And right now, all of our data from the student systems and the HR systems comes via batch jobs, so that's once a day. And we'd really like to, but it's more on their end than our end. But we really start wanting to do that more real time if we can. And then we're also looking at various workflow engines. Our first case of that is going to be a guest request system. People can, right now it's paper forms and complicated, but they'll be able to request a guest and have a sponsor and get approved and get into the system. Okay, let me see if I can. I've lost the connection again. Not quite back yet. We'll see. So this is our welcome page to the registry for any of the people who are either looking up data or trying to fix a problem or whatever. It is CAS enabled. And so this is once you've logged in, this is the main page. All your tasks are down the left-hand side here. That list is based on what authority you have to do things. So like the authorization services where you can set that up, down below, most people don't have, but I'm, admin kind of person, so I get to see that. So you get to see what you actually have access to. You also, if you're in a department, you only get to see those people that you're in charge of. You don't get to see the whole world and everyone's SSNs. So let me just, we should have some test accounts here. So first thing I want to do is I want to view a person and look at their data. I can do that based on any identifier type. So we have way more identifiers than I'd like to see, but those are all our identifiers from various places. So you can look up any identifier you know. You can also, below that, look them up by name. So look at one of the, this is a test record that someone set up for me. So it searches for that, and down here comes up with, and I'll show an example where there's more matches, but here this is a record that matched that net ID, and hopefully only one. If I click on that, then you have two sections of this person. The first is the calculated person. So that's the data that's all merged together from all the sources. So you've got your name, date of birth, gender, bunch of identifiers. You also have, and not on this one, I'll talk about it a little bit. You have the ID card information, and then you have their roles. At the university, this person has an active student role, an active alumni role, an active guest role, and then 2 inactive summer student, winter student roles. If we drill down into one of those roles, you get a lot more information about the role information. HERDS is our current implementation of kind of grouping, so that gives them some additional access to things. We have the email addresses, phone, address, etc. We can also audit that. So if I want to look at all the changes to roles and identifiers for this person, it's a test system, it's a little slower than production. So these are all the changes since we went live for roles and identifiers for this person. So you can go back and you can see who did it, although this one is anonymous. You can see who did it, what changed, when it changed. It is really helpful for the help desk people who are like, I should have my account, but I don't, something's not working or whatever. They can go in here and they can say, well, we didn't get the data yet, or the data expired yesterday, or whatever the issue is. So very helpful. And then if I scroll down, there are 2 more boxes, and those are the source of record data. So that's the data that's coming directly from independent sources. In this case, SRDB is our student records database. the homegrown mainframe thing. And so that's where all the Rutgers student data comes from. The OR web is, the guest was entered through the web interface, which is what we're looking at here. And you can audit those also. Looks very similar. I think I just lost internet. 1 second. So anyway, the view that we're looking at is the view that's presented to everyone who uses it for whatever. And so if you're creating guests, if you're looking at data because there's a problem, if you're changing some data, that's the interface that you're going to see for pretty much anything. And the hotel's not responding. Well, that may be the end of the day. While I'm slinging with this, any questions at this point?
Yeah, quick question. So you have an ldap connector. So you get these nightly batch jobs that put in new people into your system, and then OpenRegistry has a built-in way to talk to ldap and insert records.
Right. So there are events that get anytime data comes in and gets changed, whether it's from the batch, and obviously there's a lot of changes in a short amount of time there, or in the guest system throughout the day. All of those changes fire off events that get onto an event queue. And so the ldap connector, the data services connector, the connectors that take data back to the old med school, those all basically get fired off whenever events happen. And for ldap, it populates ldap directly at that point.
I'm assuming that ldap connector is pretty configurable, so you could change base DNs and ldap addresses and administrative account names.
Yeah, that was written specifically for Rutgers and our schema in our ldap. What I'd like to do or see done or whatever is make that much more configurable, and we're looking at actually using that or another instance of that to populate an enterprise AD, which is a project coming up. And so maybe at that point we'll make it much more configurable. Right now it's a lot of hard-coded schema names and so forth. Okay, well I have this. Did that answer? Okay. Okay. Let me try to just hit a few highlights. So there's add a person. I'm going to try to add somebody here. And I'm going to try to pick a SSN that hopefully isn't used. And so it's going and seeing if this person already exists in the registry or not. So here it found two people that are possible matches. I guess test user and Thomas Esser are close as far as I think Soundex. So if they are one of those people, you can add the role to them because they already exist. If not, in this case, I'm going to add a new person and a new role. Let's see here. Let's just say they're, just make them a guest. Just do that. And add their role. When you add it through here, this essentially is adding an early faculty because they should be coming from a different source. So you get a 3-month buffer, and hopefully your data has come down by then and overlays this. There's title, which you don't have to fill in, but I do need to fill in something in the department. And then you can fill in this other information if you had it, address, phone number. I think any of that's required. So. And the person's been added to the registry. They created a NetID TU36. We do those sort of license plates, NetIDs, but you can plug in whatever you want to base it on, more on the name and first initial, last name, or whatever you want to do. There's also this activation key, and we haven't really used it certainly to its full power, but essentially you can give that to the user and they can use that to activate. They can either go into the NetID management, and we'll try to do that, and activate based on typing in birth date and SSN and some information. They can also use the activation key to do that. And if you can, we've looked at, it's more we're not using it for political reasons, and no one's quite sure they want to move that way yet, but you can send that via email if you've got personal email address for people, or you can put it in a welcome package or whatever you want to do, or if they're at a help desk, you can just hand it to them and they can go off and activate. Let's see. So there's the split and join I talked about. A couple other, most of these are very specific to Rutgers. House staff is something from the med school that we can bulk load guests and house staff, or essentially do what I did. The authorization services, you can find users just like you would, we saw before. And authorization is you've got authorizations, or authorities, sorry, and you've got users, and then you can group the authorities into more meaningful, they're pretty low level, so you can group them into more meaningful groups, and then users can be in those, or use those groups. So some of the authorities, some of these, you can figure out, some not so much, but you can add ID cards, or add person, or add certain guests, add roles, so you either have those authorities or you don't, depending on what you're doing. Maybe you just read only on the data, or maybe you can actually write the data or be administrator. Let's see. I'm going to try to activate that person. I did not test this part. So here's, let me actually, already lost that. Okay. So this is our NetID management tool. You can change passwords. We have security questions. This will flow into creating services. So there'll be basically a list of services that you have the ability to get access to, and so you choose which ones you want. You can manage your email addresses in here, your display addresses, but we're going to activate my NetID. So, SSN.
SSL.
Hmm?
SSL.
Okay. Then it goes through, I don't know if I want to go through all this, but it goes through security questions. So you get to pick your question and put in something. And you do this for 3 security questions. Then you would set up your password. That's going to go for us into Kerberos. You activate email, set up a display email address, and any accounts, your Google Mail accounts or your local accounts and so forth. Watch me go through this, but probably take me off. And then the person's ready to use their account. Any questions?
Yeah, this is kind of back to something you mentioned earlier, the group, that you want to do a group registration.
Mm-hmm.
What is it that?
Mohammed probably knows more about that than I do, but I mean, we're just starting to look at it, but right now we don't really have a good grouping mechanism. I'm not sure exactly how we're going to integrate with the registry per se. We'd obviously be using that data to generate certain groups, list of all faculty, etc. We'd also have ad hoc groups, which would have really nothing to do with the registry. But then you could use the registry data to pull down members of the groups and so forth. But at this point, I mean, we know we need something for groups. Various things that generate faculty mailing lists that are all kind of ad hoc off on their own, and so we really want something central and well supported. Beyond that, I don't know that we've gone down for specific use cases or requirements for people yet.
One of the use case for the grouper is to use this authorization tab, like use grouper permission instead of built-in permission.
Right, yeah, the authorization that I showed you is totally just locally built into the registry, and it'd be nice to be able to just use grouper for that. All right, thank you.